Comic books in the 1970s were a great time for emerging artists in the comic book industry. In this video, I'm going to take a look at one of the more underrated artists of that time, and that's Jim Aparo. Jim Aparo first started out doing work at Charlton Comics, and he worked on a wide range of comic books. If you look at some of the covers he did during that time, it seems no genre was left untouched. Westerns, horror, romance, teen, and of course the all-popular automobile genre. He was also one of the very few comic book artists at that time who could pencil, ink, and letter all of his work. It's really in the comic book series The Phantom where his work would really start to develop and shine. During this time at Charlton, he would also do penciling on Aquaman at DC. It was Dick Giordano, who had also worked at Charlton before, that brought him over to DC. Aparo would work on a variety of titles, and I think it was his time at Charlton working on a variety of different genres that would give him the experience to grow as a comic book artist. This was also the case for many artists who work at Charlton. Aparo would work on titles like The Phantom Stranger, as well as become the regular penciler for The Brave and Bold, and had a tremendous run on that title. He would also be part of the team that revived the Spectre in Adventure Comics. If you ever want to read stories about a truly grim, mean-spirited superhero, read some of these Spectre stories. Grim is a perfect word to describe this character. I really do love the covers on this run, though. I want to show you a few comic books in my collection that have Jim Aparo covers. And the first few I want to show are from Adventure Comics. Issue number 431 would be the first issue that he came back. Now, he originally appeared in the Silver Age in Showcase, and he also had his own series, but it would be a break before that series ended and his reappearance in Adventure. These covers by Jim Aparo are just amazing. There's some similarity to Neil Adams with his work, as you can see, but they're really nice. Next up are a few issues of The Brave and the Bold, starting with number 108, 109, and I thought an interesting issue was 111, where he teams up with the Joker. Jim Aparo would also do work on Detective, and the first issue I want to show is number 437, which is also significant because it's the first issue that Archie Goodwin and Walt Simonson would start their really excellent Manhunter run. Here are a few more issues, including some 100 pages, which I really like. And this is an issue of Man-Bat number 1 that only lasted 2 issues. While Jim Aparo is well known for the work he did in the 1970s, it would be the Batman stories he worked on in the 1980s that are better known. There are a few story arcs I want to talk about that had artwork by Jim Aparo. Many of them feature scripts written by Jim Starlin. The first is Batman number 416, which is a great single-issue story that features the original Robin, Dick Grayson, who essentially passes the torch to the new Robin, Jason Todd. I did a video that reviewed a list of the top 50 single-issue stories in comic books, and a viewer commented recommending this particular issue. This issue is written by Jim Starlin and penciled by Jim Aparo with inks by Mike DiCarlo. One thing interesting about the cover is that it's inked by Bill Sienkiewicz, and while you could see him impart a little bit of his style in the work, he keeps Jim Aparo's pencils pretty much intact. It's just interesting to see Sienkiewicz do ink work, as he's far better known for his pencils. There's a lot of story packed into this one issue. Jason Todd, who recently became the new Robin, is looking to show his worthiness. And Dick Grayson, the original Robin, who is now Nightwing, gets him out of a tough situation. Nightwing also lets Jason know that he knows who Batman is and that he needs to talk to him. The story does a really nice job of bridging the gap between the original breakup between Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson as the original dynamic duo. There was a pretty long period of time in comic books where Batman went solo, and Bruce gives his reasoning why he broke up the partnership, and in a pretty revealing moment, why he chose to recruit a new Robin. A pretty emotional story, and a side of Batman you don't get to see very often. Right after that came 10 Nights of the Beast, a 4-part series. It's a surprisingly brutal story about a Soviet agent called the KG Beast who kills a lot of notable political figures in Gotham to create chaos. He pushes Batman to the brink in this series and is a very memorable villain. It was written by Jim Starlin and had some great covers done by Mike Zeck. Not long after that came a 4-issue series called A Death in the Family, also penciled by Jim Aparo and written by Jim Starlin. This 4-issue series is notorious because it would be the readers who would determine the fate of Jason Todd, who was Robin, and they chose him to die. Jim Starlin got into a little trouble for that one, as apparently the toy company partnered with DC at that time had planned to release a toy line and Robin was in it. The two Jims, Aparo and Starlin, had quite the year on Batman with these very impactful stories. I want to shout out a friend of the channel, Austin, who has recently launched a comic book project on Kickstarter called The Masters. As described in the campaign, The Masters is an homage to the style and storytelling of The Brave and the Bold as drawn by the legendary Jim Aparo, complete with team-ups, shifting art teams, and larger-than-life villains. This series is a love letter to the Bronze Age of comics. It's really pure Bronze Age goodness, packed with action, suspense, humor, and fun extras like mazes, parody ads, and Who's Who style profiles. I really want to stress the humor part. There are a lot of levels of humor in this series that comic book fans, especially Bronze Age comic book fans, would understand and appreciate. A link to the Kickstarter is provided here and in the video description. Really, the lineup of artists in this series is incredible, with a lot of names you'll be familiar with if you're a longtime comic book fan. I really enjoyed this series, as well as the behind-the-scenes look at self-publishing. There aren't many days left in the campaign, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Okay, back to Jim Aparo and his work on Batman. I just want to briefly mention Nightfall as well, another series that had Jim Aparo artwork. This was nearing the end of his career, and he still did some pretty good work, although I have to say the story felt kind of bloated. The last series I want to mention is Batman and the Outsiders, a new team featuring Batman as a leader after leaving the Justice League of America. It's a series I haven't spent a lot of time on, but I'm planning on spending some time with it as it's been recommended by a number of viewers. Aparo's 1980s work would be more memorable because Batman was reaching new levels of popularity during that era, as well as what happened in those stories, but I think a lot of people will agree that Jim Aparo's best work was in the 1970s. When you look at Jim Aparo's work, either on the Spectre in Adventure Comics, The Phantom Stranger, his occasional story in DC's horror titles, or any of the Batman team-up issues in The Brave and Bold, I think there's still a lot there to enjoy. And, on the most part, they're really not that expensive or hard to find. In a previous episode, I did a top 50 list of the greatest artists of all time, and a lot of people mentioned Jim Aparo in the comments as one of the artists who didn't make the top 50 that should have been there. No doubt an all-time great, and definitely worth revisiting. If you missed that video on the top 50 artists, you can check it out over here, or check out another one of my videos that talks about great Batman stories over here. Until next time, read and enjoy your comic books.